Okay, we're all good. Well, thank you for having me. And I will apologize first if you fall asleep or you're like, that is absolutely not what I expected to have happen today in this meeting. But I am incredibly honored, one, to be here, two, to be a partner, and I consider it that, a partner with Waxy. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm humbled, right? So it's not just about being honored. When Jeff sent the note and asked me to come speak to the group, I honestly wasn't quite sure what I was going to talk about. I've been in the fitness industry literally my entire adult life. I was 18 years old. I decided I was going to take a gap year. I wasn't going to go to college, much to my parents' dismay. And I said, and by the way, aside from that, I think I'm going to go work at a gym and sell memberships. You can only imagine, right? That was in the late 80s. And so gym and used car salesmen were probably right in the same spot, right? Health, wellness, fitness was not something people really paid to do. It was new, it was different. There were about 5 brands at that point in time. And so my parents weren't really into it, we'll just say. But I knew I was excited and passionate about fitness. But let me take you a little bit further back on who I am. And so when I walked in, I joked. I was like, I'm so glad you guys fed them cake, because now you're hyped up on sugar, hopefully. You'll stay awake, and you'll just give me just a moment to tell you a little bit about me. Because I think when we talk about leadership, partnership, and how we treat people, it's not about education. It's not about the way you look. It's really about the way you make people feel in the moment. And a lot of that comes from who you evolved from, right? So I think it's important for you to learn that about me, to bring relevancy to where we are today and the opportunity that Chris and I and Waxy have been able to create together in an industry that probably didn't put as much emphasis on clean as we did friendly, well-maintained, and profitability. So me, who am I? Well, you know how I started in the fitness industry, and again, after my parents stopped weeping, we actually joke about it. I said, who would have thought, right? Well, I wouldn't have thought that. Why? I'm the baby of 5. Both of my parents did not even finish elementary school. My mom's from Mexico, immigrant that came here when she was 18 years old, did not speak English. She is a US citizen at this point in time, and that was super important to her, right? I grew up, like I said, as the baby of 5. My father was in the military, in the Navy, and you know, we had enough because back then, you didn't actually get exposed to what others had because you played in your socioeconomic platform, which is different from today, right? Who has kids here? Who has kids that are, thank you, yes, right? Or young adults, depends how we want to say it. Well, now they're so exposed to what they don't have and the expectation that exists. I think this generation in this room has a huge appreciation for where you came from, not where you think you should be, and you earn the right to get where you're going, which is the difference, right? So my parents were older, so they were in their 40s when they had me, so I was like the really baby. And because we spoke Spanish in the household, that is my secret power. So I would say what makes me successful when it comes to cleaning and janitorial and engaging, especially with the teams that, again, we couldn't live without in any of the businesses. I always joke, if a salesperson doesn't show up, we can make that up tomorrow. If the cleaning staff just decided to not show up, we're pretty much SOL, right? I mean, it's hard to make that up, but they're often underappreciated, underrespected, and so for me, that was a connection point. So back to who I am. So I was an overweight kid, didn't have much, but had enough and didn't know the difference. And I had older brothers, so there were 3 boys, all older, and then I had an older sister. And so my oldest brother was really into Muscle and Fitness magazine. So this was back in the day when Arnold Schwarzenegger and Corey Everson. So here I am, this googly-eyed, chubby kid, babysitting my brother's kids. And and he only had one issue of this magazine. Now that I think back of it, I'm like, could you have just not bought another issue? So I would look through this issue, and I was so intrigued by fitness and health and wellness that ultimately changed my life, that one magazine. Someday I'm going to get that one magazine and find that issue that I read so much growing up, and decided to go into the fitness industry and never left. So at 18, I took this job. I worked for a company, if those of you who might be from San Diego, called Family Fitness Center. So it was started by Ray Wilson and his family, who actually lived in La Costa. And so I had this benefit of this really eclectic, unique man who's currently in his 90s, living in Mexico and opening clubs there, and to just learn at the ground root fundamentals. And he actually gave this young lady who didn't know what the heck she was doing, but just knew she loved this, and that I would work harder than anyone else, and he gave me a shot. And I was very fortunate to find mentors and leaders throughout my entire career with what was Family Fitness that turned into 24-hour fitness, and I was there ultimately for 24 years. And it was a great journey. And I always joke, I worked for one company for 24 years, but that company was probably 6 different companies as we grew from 14 clubs to 425 clubs when I ultimately left. When I think of the CEOs, the CFOs, the leaders in the leadership team, and most importantly, Ray Wilson and Mark Mastrov, who continues to be kind of the godfathers of the fitness industry, who started what we know today. And I had no business being allowed to do the things that I was allowed to do. And I always joke, I was the Mikey who remembers the Life commercials, Life cereal. Just give it to Mikey. Mikey likes everything. He'll eat it. Well, that was me. Nobody wanted to do something, give it to Bobbi. She'll say yes. Why? Because I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to make an impact and an influence. Sometimes I look back and I go, probably not the smartest decision on my point to say yes every single time they gave me something, because I said I could never articulate who I was and what I did, but what I always knew, that at the core, it was about how I treated the people. And that has transcended into the leadership style, the relationships personally and professionally that I have with individuals, and more importantly, with the people who work side by side with me. So I'm not an executive and I'm not a leader, and I'm proud to say that, because that's actually what's afforded me my success. And you'll find that I really rarely ever use those terms if you were around me. And that's because I learned a really valuable lesson in the entire span of my career, and that is that I don't like that. The minute I meet somebody and their identity is who they are from a business perspective, I know it takes me a while to warm up and learn and understand who that person is, because they predefine themselves to me. I want people to get to know me, and for me to earn their respect, not to expect that respect because of something that comes after my name. So going back to 2-4, Mikey, and I called my department the Mr. Potato Head. And that's because we just stuck things all over that head, and sometimes the ear was on the top of the head, and sometimes, the lips were back here, but somehow we made it work, and eventually all the bits and pieces fell into the right place. But only if at the foundation of everything we did, it wasn't about me, it was about everybody else. Has anyone read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth? Okay, if you haven't, I highly recommend it, because she's a Harvard professor who did studies on what makes people successful. Is it innate talent? Is it education? Is it, relationships? It is who you know, right? Or is it that thing, that perseverance, the passion, and I'm going to say the H word, the hustle that lives within an individual? How many's met somebody who's super, super smart, but you would never have them on your team? Right? Same thing. Now, I might say that because I'm not college educated, and so maybe that's just my way of making myself feel better, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Because I always put who someone is and their passion, their hustle, and their heart way before pedigree and education. Because I truly believe you can teach people anything. Now, my son's a chemist. You can't teach me that. So you also have to be able to figure that out, right? But at the same time, I think what it takes to be a leader and to be successful has more to do innately with who you are. And where I started is where I'll start again with my relationship with Waxy. And that is that I came literally from nothing, and not meaning nothing monetarily, and I had a roof over my head and all of those things. But if you met me, you would have never thought that I would be standing here today. Quite frankly, I wouldn't have thought I'd be standing here today. It just wasn't meant to be. Why? Because it's easy to look out the window at everything that currently exists instead of looking in the mirror and having that conversation of what was possible. And that's what I do with every person that I interact with. So I was with 24 years. I was with Bay Club about 5, and I'm with EOS Fitness, which is another fitness brand, and I've been there 5 months. So, and I'm just about as passionate about every single one of them, probably equally, because you'll come to find, if you get to know me, and I hope I get to know more of you more deeply, I'm passionate about everything. Like, I can get you excited about anything. Cake, cleaning supplies, belts, clothes, shoes, nutrition, because I care, right? And that's at the foundation. I truly care. If I'm going to take the time to spend and have a conversation, I care. So, I don't know, it was like 5 years ago, and I was an executive vice president for the Bay Club company, different brand, hospitality. If you're wondering why I left 24, it's because I'd been there 24 freaking years. And I didn't know if I could do what I do somewhere else. And it was a little bit of insecurity because I didn't have an education. And I was like, I think I'm good, but am I good at what I do? Can I do this somewhere else? So I took a risk. And I self-selected myself out. I'm happy to say the team that I left has elevated. They're still there, and it's a great company that in a lot of ways resonates for me, Waxy. Because there are people who've worked there since the day we opened the doors. The culture, the camaraderie, the belief, the history, the heritage, and the lineage that exists in that company still exists today. It's different, it's evolved, but it's a privately held company, and so they've allowed to create what they wanted without all of the influence from the outside, which is a beautiful thing and very rare, especially in large billion-dollar organizations. So I go to the Bay Club, hospitality brand, still comfortable in my fitness roots because they still have fitness stuff. And I'm running the Southern California leg of that particular organization. And there's this kid that shows up, and he starts meeting with the club manager, Stephanie Botker, who is an absolute dream. So she's a younger, better looking, smarter version of me. So if you ever get an opportunity to speak to her, please do. And so she said, there's this guy, and he just keeps calling, and he's relentless, but he's really nice, and I think you should take some time to meet with him. And I don't know how the story goes, but I think she just put a meeting on the calendar, and I showed up. And there was Chris and David Wax in my office, and it was such a great meeting, but it was, I'm pretty hard-nosed when it comes to things, right? I want to make sure that it's right for the company. I want to make sure that I'm making, I'm a good steward of finances as well as just not change for the sake of change. And things were okay. And let's be quite honest, I was new to a company. I wanted to make a name for myself, and I really didn't think hey, I'm going to change janitorial supply companies. It was probably the first place that I should be focusing on what I should be doing. Chris made that almost impossible to not take that meeting. And you know what? I'm the one who should be thankful, because this young man, and I'll call it, I was going to say this kid, this young man here impacted and influenced me as much as he says that I've impacted and influenced him. And I don't think he understands who he is, but I know the people who interface with him, and I'm sure his other not as favorite as me clients and customers would say the same thing. I joke, Chris was young, came in, was excited, had perseverance, had passion, and had hustle, and he didn't give up. And I was not nice, right? So when you first meet me and you want my business, I'm kind of tough, right? You have to be. I need to make sure, can I work with you? Can you take it? Because we're gonna be on a journey. And sometimes journeys get rocky. They're not always smooth, right? It's not a trip, it's a journey, and it was gonna be a long one, because I believe if you're not gonna do something for at least 6 months, don't do it. Who's with me, right? How often? Because change for the sake of change makes everybody crazy. And so we made a commitment together, and Chris lived in an apartment with his friends. He had one dog when I met him. Today, I don't know how many dogs Chris has, but I do know he has one wife and a beautiful daughter named Autumn. And through this relationship with Waxy, I've also gotten to learn and understand and know the family. So Nick and Carol and Nicole, and I mentioned Kristen and beautiful baby Autumn, and who they are. And it's not by accident that one meeting with Chris changed my perspective. Someone took a chance on me. Like I said, googly, chubby person who read muscle magazines, and they let me work for them. And that's how I look at it. And I worked harder than anyone else. I will outwork you, right? Because that's all I got. Because I will never be the smartest person in the room, ever. I'll never be the best looking person in the room. I'll never be the youngest person in the room anymore. I used to like that. That actually used to happen. But I will be top 5 most passionate person in the room, and I'll work harder than anyone else. And that doesn't mean harder than the person I'm aspiring to be, because I don't aspire to be anybody. I aspire to be the person who removes the obstacles for anyone who's next to me. And that's my customers, my members in my world, my partners and my vendors and my peers, and then my team. Because without that, we have nothing. And so when it comes to Chris and he introduced me, we could have flip-flopped the names, because I've learned so much, and I've been so proud. And the relationship and trust that's been built. When I left Bay Club, one of the very first calls I made when I landed at my new organization was to Chris. And I said, we need help, like in a big way, right? And I think we can redefine what clean means to the fitness industry. And we just need to figure out how to do that, because we can sell memberships like the Dickens. And we know that there's never going to be a magic pill. Did I say that? There's never going to be a magic pill, diet, program, or book that's going to get you fit. So we got that, right? But what plagues us is interruption. And interruption comes in a lot of ways. And most of them I can't control, right? I can't control that, there's cake sitting on the counter, right? That's a personal choice if I pick that up and eat it, and I will every single time. I can't control that work got you so busy you can't come in and be fit, or that you don't have the education for a nutrition perspective to know what the right macronutrients are to reach your goals. What I can control is the minute you step in the door that we're going to be friendly, clean, and well-maintained, and so that you can't look at me for the reason why you aren't successful in your fitness journey. But that comes from partnerships. And the partnership that we have, and I'm going to say I've had with Waxy, has transcended that. And so through all of that, I had an opportunity to meet Jeff. And so I was at a baby shower for Chris. And Chris has not only been a great friend and a mentor to me, he's also trained my dogs. and been a great family friend and a role model, and the son that I didn't birth, so I take some credit for him. Sorry, Nick. And so, having said that, we were at the baby shower, and they're like, gosh, you know, and throughout my journey with Chris, he would mention Jeff, and he would talk about Jeff and his leadership style, and I said, it resounded with me. It resonated with what I believed in. And so he said, maybe we can set up a meeting and you can meet with them. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's weird, but what will I say to this person? You know, hand wringing and so forth. And we met, I think it was back in December, early December, and we met in his office. And, you know, what had already developed as a beautiful relationship personally for me and professionally with Waxy and the Rossner family also started to transcend in who you were as a company. And so when I came to the office and I met with Jeff, and there wasn't awkward. It was like we just started chatting, right? And it's in the nuances and all of the details. He didn't sit behind the desk. He sat right next to me. We engaged, we talked about blue bloods, we had philosophical conversation, we talked about our families, and there was very little about anything else. But it made an impact. But what made the biggest impact wasn't just that, it's when I toured the building here. And I was just blown away, because I'm all about heritage and history and what it means, and like truly to your core believing in what you do. And there are some businesses that you may say are so inspirational, right? Apple, right? Oh, yes, I want to be like Apple. Some might argue 24-hour fitness, right? Oh, we change people's lives and we make them better and they're healthier and they live longer. Yes, right? Amazon, Google, you could just keep going and going. And as I walked through here, the heritage, and not only the heritage you can talk about, but that you can visually see, and that's been embraced here over decades of building a brand. And you see the Waxy bee everywhere. And it culminated for me not only in the walk and the faces, and that Jeff knew everybody's name as we walked through, but as we circled and we came down, and I don't remember what area, but there's a painting, and there's this super stylish woman at a counter, and she has like a fur neck thing on her coat, right? And just very 60-esque. Then Jeff said, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, yeah, and yeah, they worked here. So it wasn't just about a brand, it was about the history. And then as we came down into the lobby, and my favorite part of it was the bee in the lobby. And the bee represented I'm so dumb, right? I'm like, represented your people, and that you cared, and that they didn't just go away. So I left that day going, sometimes you're just dumb. Like, I didn't even want to come to the meeting, because I was like, what am I saying to this guy? This is so weird. I was really nervous to come, and then I called Chris, like right when I got in the car. I'm like, oh my God, I love Jeff, and I love Waxy, which is crazy, because yes, I love Waxy. And I then went into my new career, because I hadn't started with EOS yet, and so I started with EOS, and I oversee all of the operations for them, from the time you become a member, and then all the facilities and the interface and the experience. And so probably 4 weeks in, I had an opportunity to do a summit for all of our area operations managers, so those that kind of oversee multi-unit. And so we brought them all into a room and really teaching them some fundamental leadership skills, right? How to tell your story, right? Like how often, that's so huge, right? That's the connection point. If you want to connect with someone, gosh, they better know who you are, right? And you better do it in an intriguing, compelling, and transparent and honest way. And so we taught him that, and we taught him about how to be there for your people, and just all the things that fundamentally, traditionally, no, I was never trained, right? I'm not a classically trained individual, and you can probably tell that as I'm standing up here. But what I know is how people who've influenced and transcended and helped me evolve to who I am today, I know how they treated me. And I'm a great copycatter, great copycatter. And so that's what I did. And anything that I also saw that I didn't like, I just didn't do, even if it meant it being painful along the way. And so we culminated those 3 days, and nobody really knew that I had a secret tattoo of Waxy on my shoulder. I'm kidding, I don't. But I told that story. Exactly. I said, you know what, you guys, I had this awesome opportunity to visit this company right before I started, and we had the opportunity to be them. Different, but them. Because EOS is only 3.5 years old, right, as a brand, right? Some of our buildings are older, and if you visit, you'll notice that, but it's a brand. And I said, we're at the start of something, and we're here to grow. And so we could start today, and let me tell you about this company. And so I started telling the story of the Wax family, and about Jeff and Chris, but I didn't use names, right? And I'm just describing, I go to their corporate offices, and it's just awesome, and like they have the first product they ever developed in a case, like, you know, those high schools that you go to, and they've got like all of the stuff, like the trophies and the helmet from the 1950s and all those things. I'm like, and then they have these murals, and they're painted on the wall, and you know, and then they weren't even called the name that they are, and then, but they still kept it, and I'm like telling them all these things, because literally, Jeff's talking to me, and I'm like listening and hanging on every word. And I said, and then there's this guy that I meet, right? And he was awesome, and he tells me his story. And I can only aspire for my story to at some point match Jeff's, so you are incredibly fortunate and blessed. But he brings out the frame in his office that was the letter that he received when he had done his internship, very similar to the picture he described of someone else in this room, and the pride that came from that. And that he started in the beginning, and he started without the eyesight up to where he was going to go. He started it based on where he was, right? And many people don't. They start a job thinking they're going to be someone they're not yet, right? Be in the moment. And so I'm telling the story, and they're all like listening, and like, oh, you know, I'm sure in their heads they're like, oh, you know, like, where is this? And Bobbi's so lucky. And so then I said, what company do you think? And they said the companies that I said earlier, right? Apple, Amazon, Google, Tesla. They're like, you know, and I'm like, awesome. I'm like, do you have a way to get me in there? I said, no. It's actually a company that we're starting to work with, and it's Waxy. And if a company who started out with the right purpose, mission, and vision, and wanted to preserve culture, can do what they've been able to do over the span of decades, and have someone like me tell that story, and I talk about Waxy all of the time, what do we have the opportunity to do as an organization? So you have not, and I say you, right? So I've focused on a couple individuals. You, because you are Waxy, you are the Waxy organization. You're the future, the now, and the past of Waxy, have had an impact and an influence on me very personally, and you have an impact not only on your industry, but it transcends your industry. Because when you interface with a customer, you have a choice. You have a choice. Am I going to someday have that customer talk about me and Waxy and the organization the way Bobbi talked about the organization in May of 2019? Because every interaction is an opportunity to create a raving fan. And you guys all deserve every one of your customers to speak the way I speak about you, and I will continue to do so, because there's no doubt in my mind, whether I'm at EOS or somewhere else, that Waxy will continue to be an integral part of what I believe is so incredibly important, regardless of the industry. So I thank you guys for not falling asleep. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to steal a few minutes of your time, probably more than Jeff would have liked. And again, honored and humbled to have had the opportunity to talk to you today. So thank you.
Well, I told you that when I met Bobbi that I felt that she was a very special customer, but more important, a special woman and a special lady. And I did learn about your family and her children and her husband and her passion. And so I hope that all of us can learn from your passion and can take what we do here and spread it with many other people. And your love for your people, right, and is how we like to treat our people. We talk about, many people talk about, being the most valuable resource people, but you live it. Right? And you live it each and every day. And I hope as leaders of Waxy that we can take that away too. I oftentimes will say, Bobbi, that really we're just a bunch of buildings with lots of inventory in them, right? But
Yep.
it's really all about the people. The almost 1,000 people now that make up Waxy. And I appreciate your compliments of Chris, your compliments of Nick and Carol and their family, and your love for and your passion for Waxy that we have. It's very unique. And so I just want to honor you, and on behalf of our owners, I want to give you this gift of Waxy and a gift certificate. Say thank you for investing time and sharing your story with us. And we look forward to furthering our friendship and our business relationship.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.